Hi, my name is Roland Murphy from RGM Watch Company. We're here at the National Watch and Clock Collectors Association Museum and headquarters in Columbia, Pennsylvania. What we're going to do today is I'm going to give you a short tour of my favorite things in the museum. If you come to Columbia, be sure you come in and look for the items that I'm pointing out here today. So come on down. One of my favorite things here is actually outside the museum. It's the clock tower behind me. It's actually driven by a vintage antique E. Howard & Company clock tower movement, which you can see in the base of the tower. Make sure when you're here you go over and look in the window so you can see the movement.
Also outside the museum is a vintage 4-dial street clock. Make sure you take a look at that before you enter the museum. The museum also houses a very large collection of antique tall case clocks, many of which were made in Pennsylvania, also locally here in Lancaster County. Here we have a very nice Seth Thomas pillar and scroll clock from 1818. Actually, Eli Terry made the first pillar and scroll clocks with wooden works movements, but Seth Thomas followed that up with a very rare model which the museum has that has an off-center pendulum. There's a hole in the painting in the glass below the dial where you can see the pendulum can be seen. It's very unusual to have the pendulum off-center. This was a hallmark of this rare Seth Thomas model. One of my favorite things in the museum is the vast collection of American-made railroad watches. They have a wonderful collection from companies such as Hamilton, Elgin, Illinois, and many more. They also have a number of wonderful clocks that would be seen typically in railroad stations. RGM, of course, we would always come and look at the Rose engine. We have a very nice example here at the museum. This awesome clock was made in 1870 in Bristol, Connecticut. It's one of my very favorite clocks in the museum. Just look at the size of this thing. This clock has a deadbeat escapement and a pendulum that is filled with real mercury. This was used for temperature compensation. No watch museum would be complete without a Breguet watch. Breguet is known as the most famous creative watchmaker ever. It's a fine example here from 1814. The museum here, they've even recreated an antique jewelry store.
like the way it was like 100 years ago. This is amazing. There's authentic clocks, watches, even a watchmaker's bench with all the tools of the time. It really gives you that feeling of going back in time. Definitely a stop you want to make in the museum. And the recreated jewelry store. They have a lot of American clocks from like the 1890s, 1880s. We have kitchen clocks up top, some of these different mantle clocks were very famous at the time and were affordably made, so a lot of people could afford a clock then. The antique bench they have in here is authentic. The old bench, old tools, just like the way it was. But the amazing thing is that today, working and repairing and building and restoring mechanical watches really hasn't changed because we use the same tools. We use lathes like this, staking set, the tweezers, it's all the same. So the tools are very familiar. I could sit down here today and actually put a watch together. One of my favorite clocks in the museum is a tower clock made by E. Howard in Boston. It's right behind me here. This clock is really awesome, and one of the great things about it has the rare gravity escapement. Take a look. It's gorgeous. This is a replica clock that was made in Germany. It's a super accurate clock. This particular example was actually in Hamilton Watch Company. This clock was made around 1929. Hamilton used this clock to actually check the precision of their watches. This clock was actually bolted to the floor, and this clock was in a sealed chamber and pressurized at a constant temperature to help maintain the accuracy.
From the 1940s, the museum has a beautiful Patek Philippe Grand Complication pocket watch. The watch has a perpetual calendar, a minute repeater, and a split-second chronograph. From time to time, you may even see one of my watches in the museum, an RGM. Also, make sure you find the display case that has the watches from Lancaster County. There's a number of pocket watches from the early watchmaking history right here in Pennsylvania. There's an Adams and Perry watch. There are E.F. Bowman, also Lancaster and Keystone watch companies. That's a must-see case. I never leave the museum without checking that case out.
In the room we're in now, they have a lot of old Hamilton things. They have the first Hamilton watch. They have a wonderful collection. In this case here, they even have Admiral Byrd's watch. He was an early American explorer, would go to the Antarctic. They have one of his watches in here. That's also a must-see on the stop in the museum. Well, I hope you enjoyed the visit to the museum today and some of the things that I particularly like here. I hope you can visit personally and come back and see these things firsthand. It's a wonderful place for people who love watches and clocks.